Hochberger and Ohio Congressman Mike Turner. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so this is splashed across the news today. I mean, this is what we really have been hearing about, the biggest story of the day, and it will likely continue to be that. And the Democrats are controlling the narrative at the end of the day. There are not MAGA Republicans in the room to defend any comments. Congressman Turner, I'm going to start with you. Do you think that Kevin McCarthy right now is regretting his decision to remove Republicans from that committee?
Well, I think Kevin has done a very good job in trying to shepherd through what is an absolute partisan effort by Nancy Pelosi. I mean, the stories that we heard today were incredibly tragic. And of course, there were tragic things that occurred on January 6th. But what we're seeing here is a very partisan investigation. When you look at the final report, when you look at even who's speaking, you will not have any inquiry as to why the Capitol was not adequately protected today, why there wasn't additional security, what was the Speaker's role in determining that there was not a need for additional security at the Capitol. All those things are very important. They're things that certainly Republicans, like Americans, have raised, and they will not be part of this investigation.
Congresswoman Hochberger, do you agree?
Absolutely. Today, it's just political theater. You know, what Speaker Pelosi did is she changed the actors out and she put so-called Republicans in that play Republicans, and that was Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. And I hate that, because are we going to get the truth? Probably not, because it's going to be pretty partisan from here on in.
Congressman Turner, I've heard many people on the left say because there is not enough Republican representation on this select committee, that it shows a lack of support from Republicans with our law enforcement, because those are the individuals who mainly were affected on January 6th. We had many officers who were hurt or their lives affected, as we heard today. What would you say to those comments that Republicans, this shows that they're not in support of our men and women in blue?
Well, clearly, we are in support of our police. We're in support of security, and we're in support of making certain that we have adequate security so that everybody is safe. Those who defend us need to have all resources so that their lives are not at risk. Part of what's tragic that we heard about today was not only how these officers were treated by these people who were there January 6th, their individual experiences that day, but also they did not have the proper tools. They did not have the proper security that was there. And why didn't they? What did the Speaker do or not do to make certain that the Capitol that day did not have the resources they need? I always think that when you hear these stories of people who are serving their country and trying to make us all safe, we need to make sure that they have every tools available, and clearly at that day they did not.
Yeah, Congressman Turner, you just mentioned it, but Congresswoman Hochberger, under testimony today, one of the police officers actually detailed how they were more prepared for the BLM riots than they were for January 6th event. Take a listen.
As Americans in the world watching horror what was happening at the Capitol, we did not receive timely reinforcement and support we needed. In contrast, during the Black Lives Matter protests last year, U.S. Capitol Police had all the support we needed and more. Why the different response?
Yeah, even the former chief of U.S. Capitol Police noted back in January that security officials at the House and Senate denied his early request to call on the National Guard ahead of demonstrations on January 6th. And listen, Nancy Pelosi is the one who called this commission. Is there any world where she gets held responsible for not approving more help when it was requested early on?
Well, probably not in this committee hearing. The sad thing is, maybe she can't handle the truth. We want to know exactly what happened. We were part of that. We were in the chamber. And to have her just get off scot-free, maybe she doesn't want us to know the truth about what happened. Those law enforcement agencies did not have what they needed, the resources. Why were the National Guard not there? What about the D.C. police? Did she contact the mayor to get reinforcements? We may never know the answer to these questions, and we respect our policemen. We want them to have every bit of information they need. We don't know if there was chatter, and if there was, why did she not act on that? Because she is in charge of the Capitol Police. These are things that we may never know, and it's sad, and the American public want to know these answers. So do we in Congress, and we need to know these things.
Yeah, we'll see. Hey, Congressman Turner, President Biden visited Director of National Intelligence Office today amid the intelligence community's ongoing investigation into the origins of COVID-19. In addition, the current monetary policy of the federal government is to print cash. Or even our Fed is buying Treasury bonds and putting massive amounts of money into circulation. Just curious, though, with most of that money being borrowed from China, will these factors play a role in pressuring China on the COVID origins?
Well, I think there are a number of factors that are keeping this administration from pressing China, and it's clearly unfortunate because not only is time passing, but China is not being held accountable. I sit on the Intelligence Committee. If you go to the minority, the Republican portion of the Intelligence Committee's website, there is a report there that shows in open source the number of things that we know about the Wuhan lab, the number of concerns as to even NIH involvement with respect to the Wuhan lab and why there should be ongoing congressional investigations. You know, today, while we have these incredibly heart-wrenching, compelling stories from these officers, there's not one hearing going on Capitol Hill at all about the origins of COVID-19 and its effects on families here, its effects on our economy. And its effects around the world. There should be hearings ongoing now, not just the President of the United States visiting the intelligence community to find out what they've yet to discover. We should also be investigating this and holding China accountable.
Absolutely. And the fact that there aren't hearings going on really makes you wonder, what do Democrats know? Because I know there have been Republicans who have had a committee against China to try to understand this better. But why isn't there bipartisan support, Congressman Harshbarger? Why don't we see this across the aisle? Why are they defending China so defiantly, or their lack thereof?
Well, it's because the Biden administration is not holding them accountable. You know, look what happened to Australia. When they wanted the WHO to go in and find out about the origins of COVID, what did they do? They shut them down on their exports into China. So maybe the Biden administration is afraid of what will happen to the United States. You know, I was put on a task force by Leader McCarthy, and it's a China task force. And we're going to go in and we're going to find out what we can do to shore up domestic supply lines and supply chains, because we should not be dependent on China for anything. And the COVID origins, you know, there's Steve Scalise put a COVID task force together. All lines point toward China. Why would they buy the PPE up and then sell it back to make a profit? There's too many unanswered questions, and we need to get those answers. And we won't rest until we get those.
You know, Congressman Turner, we really haven't seen China comply even with the World Health Organization right now, which makes you wonder, are we actually going to get an answer from China? Is it too late? Because they have not complied. And at this point, it's been over a year. So any evidence they may have is likely gone.
Right. So China certainly hasn't been open about what was occurring at the lab for us to even do an investigation as to the sources. Now, remember, they were open to taxpayers' dollars through the NIH that supported some of the functions that were going on at the Wuhan lab. So clearly, you know, this is where China knows that they have an incredible vulnerability. Not only does everyone know the virus came from China, it's not like we have to ascertain an investigation to find, you know, its national origin, but its local origin. How did it occur? How did and what was happening at that Wuhan lab? Because the other thing that we have to be concerned about is not only just, as the president has said in his intelligence review, whether or not there was an accidental release, also what intentionally was going on at this lab, what role did the Chinese military have in the functions of this lab? And that's a national security issue because it goes to threaten not only the health of the United States, the security of the United States, but of the world. And we've certainly seen its impact with this virus.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to get to the bottom of it. Thank you for what you both are doing to hold China accountable. We got to get more answers and appreciate you guys' insights on this. And we'll have to keep checking in with you about this January 6th. I know many people are frustrated at what is going down and the confusion that it's creating.
Thank you.